Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and as is my wont, I have a plugin to post. Actually, I got a number of new things, but the plugin is the key one, really. I've been working on stuff I learned after doing Console 7, and I would like to show you. Okay, that's different. We're going to see whether that turns off while I'm busy using it. This is Ardour, and there's an interesting thing about it that you'll notice, which is Ardour lets me put channel plugins and console plugins post-fader. So Ardour can already work with console. I believe this is also the basis for Harrison Mixbus, so Harrison Mixbus might also let you do this. And my plugin is called Acceleration2. Now, one of the things about it is clearly they haven't thought it out super well. What this says is limit and dry wet. And what Acceleration2 does is it's based off of the original acceleration but improved. And as you can hear, that's darkened things. So here's what acceleration is about. Apologies for the way the interface looks. It looks kind of nice, but you can't read anything. That's Ardour for you. I could be showing you this in Logic, but there are other alternatives to Logic, and it's nice to be able to work on lots of various things. Actually, I was going to take a moment and see whether maybe I can load a VST, but I don't think it knows where mine are. Nope, it sees all the AUs, but it doesn't see the VSTs yet. I've not actually used Ardour much. I just downloaded it recently. One of the reasons I'm fooling with it is because there is some possibility I'll be able to compile a version for myself. Ideally on my older computer that's compatible with so many things, but even if it's on the newer Intel-based Mac, I'm still not using an M1 Mac. Who knows if I'll be able to do that anytime? We'll see. But the Ardour project is actually GPL. So, and please give me more time, Ardour. I'm being nice. I'm doing promotion for you. Be kind. Reaper is nicer about it. If you can compile Ardour, it is GPL, meaning that as long as you use the GPL license, you can release your own version of it. And that means I'd be able to make my own DAW, and that would be really interesting. Trouble is, it's really hard to compile Ardour, so I can see what... I'll keep you posted, put it that way. I'll keep you posted. It's a major undertaking. And if you download the binaries, they're like this. They have, it's a GPL program that shuts itself off periodically and nags you to pay. So that's weird, but go figure. That just goes to show you how hard it is to compile, right? Anyways, what acceleration does is it's based off of the original acceleration plugin, which comes out of 2Vinyl. And it works like an acceleration limiter. It is a high frequency controller, and the original one sort of keeps track using a DS-like algorithm of the fine details of stuff. It's not going to trigger quite so hard on really fast waveform edges, but it'll find little details that are high frequencies and go for those. And the reason I was revisiting it was because it perhaps wasn't the best as far as handling high sample rates, and I like doing stuff with high sample rates now. So it was a process of taking one of my Monday live streams and sort of diving really hard into that and seeing how much I could get it to be better. And I put in a ultrasonic filter, seeing as the changes that it applies will produce aliasing in some way, shape, or form. And I changed the mode of it applying its softening so that it's using a biquad filtered effect rather than a 3-sample average, which has a funny sort of overtone to it. Actually, you know something? I could probably show you both. Let's see. Give me more time, please, Ardor. I'm promoing you. Come on. Be good. I have not decided yet whether to pay the money and buy it, but I probably will. We'll see. We'll see how this works. Original acceleration. Let's move this up here. And yeah, as you can see, it is hiding up here, firstly. And so the difference between acceleration and Acceleration2, both of them will clean up nicely when they're not being applied. But if we run them, this is what the original acceleration will do at full crank, at 96K. It was more effective at 44.1K. And what it does is a very subtle softening of just the edges of the sound, really. A little brighter. And then again, acceleration limiting means that it's not simply a high frequency filter. Acceleration limiting essentially is looking for how loud that stuff is and turning it down as it gets louder rather than just hitting everything. So you get some of your same texture out of there, whereas, Ardor, please, Ardor, give me more time. It moved its thing to a different place. Wow, it's going to have me chase it all over the screen. Still, it is an open source project. I may be able to compile a version of it. And it lets you place stuff post faders, so Ardor is more suited to use with console than a bunch of other. This is one that lets you do that. So I thought I'd bring that to people's attention. Whereas the alternative acceleration, you can go much, much darker. And yet it's still an acceleration limiter. So no effect. You have sort of the full brightness, kick it in. And this is about as much as the original one would do. And then we can, please, Ardor, please. Oh, I have to stop it in order to, or maybe I can't do any of those things. Oh, no, there we go. And we can darken it quite a bit this way. And then if you have it on this side of the control, it's going to be it's going to let a lot of more high frequency through. Let's switch back over to our camera. I'll talk about it, right, and I'll let it throw up its little windows all at once now. The deal with Acceleration2 is that I worked on it intensely to make it work the same at 44, 48, 96, 192, whatever you want. It's going to react similarly and handle what it's doing properly. And for that reason, it's definitely a successor to Acceleration, which was, I think, one of the first Patreon plugins that I did. And Ardor is just throwing those windows at me every 2 seconds. Wow. Also, it seemed they apparently have a subscription thing, so you could become a subscriber to them for $1 per month, which is possible. Again, I'm still thinking out how I feel about all that, but it does work with console, and it's an option to like doing Logic and Pro Tools and Cubase and all those big heavy hitters and stuff. Back to Acceleration. The thing about Acceleration is that it will soften the highs in a way that's characteristic of older production techniques, like mastering to vinyl, where you needed to put acceleration limiters in to avoid burning out the cutting head. And that's part of how you get some of your retro sounds. The interesting thing about that is that unlike just the mixing boards themselves and all that stuff, high frequency limiting is dynamics dependent. So what it's going to do is let the detail of your sound come through, but it's going to glue the extreme highs in a characteristic way that is different than what you get off just rolling stuff off or distorting it. That's why I find it interesting. And if you wondered why I didn't have the other tracks from that jam, I'll tell you why. It is because, I got sassed a certain amount for the low quality of that jam, so I just copied over the drums. I'm probably going to delete the whole thing once I'm done with it. And I'm working on coming up with new ways of producing music that'll be a little bit more structured, because that was really kind of a lot of the problem. Not only was it a very freaky composition, but it was super duper unstructured, so it was just like jam band on too many quaaludes or something terrible like that. So I'm working on my concept of generating, as you can see, I've scribbled on these, generating aleatoric ideas for compositions that come off like a sort of card game. I'm going to make a card game, call it like Prague or something. And I've showed people some of this stuff before. The idea is that I can do sort of genres and textures and moods and things and make that a way to like make it a game and a sort of composition tool for coming up with a structure like that. And let's see, what do I have here? A game and a composition tool for like thinking of funny time signatures like 7s and 19s and such, and assigning those to different things. And then this is from my Circle of Fifths work, which I have posted about before as well. And if I can get these made, it'll be a deck of sort of chord cards you can dial out and play them by fitting them together in such a way that it uses the same concepts I've been doing using the synthesizers, but rather than having the synthesizers randomly generating stuff, it'll be, deal yourself some of these things, because I tend to have difficulties like thinking up a grand, wonderful composition just off the top of my head. That's why I come up with this other stuff. My head is full of plugins and ideas rather than necessarily chord progressions. But if I can start with stuff, generally I can run with it. And I'll be working on that going into the new year. Hopefully I can start making something like that happen. Should be interesting, but one of the first effects of it is going to be that I can make audio demos that are sort of less off-putting and less jammy. And that should, because I've done that before. People just have not heard that music because people don't really seek out my music. But I've done it before. It does work, so we'll see how that goes. And that should be a little more palatable for people who want to listen to the plugins in the context of something they can understand. Or possibly not. Maybe you still won't be able to understand it, but it will be more palatable regardless. And lastly, let's take a moment and firstly quit out of Ardor. It quit unexpectedly. Oh, that's a shame. And we're going to go to something else. Which I guess doesn't have its own thing to do, so bear with me. Oh, wrong thing. Arg, stop that. I do have that. That's not what I meant to do. Okay, Godot. That's going to be weird. I have a thing, which is, excuse me while I move this around. This is a video game, and this is live on the internet right now. The way you play it is you, here, let me see. Let's go to the next bit. You steer these little guys by typing, what they are, and they need to go up to the top of the screen. And this other little thing that might come into view soon or not, there is a small white ball bouncing around. That is a timing ball. If it falls to the bottom of the screen, there they go, or stops moving for long enough, it will shrink and go away. And if all the little timing balls shrink and go away, then the game is over. And the idea is to be steering all of these ones with the letters to the top of the screen, which will get harder and harder as more and more of them are there. You can't keep track of all this stuff happening at the same time. Right now I have it in a very simple way, but I might do a couple of quick changes. I'm going to see whether I can have downloadable versions of this. This is the thing I was working on like in 2019 to some extent. And I never did end up making sound for it, but it does work. It's made in Godot, the Godot engine. And you should be able to download it as a playable game. And the whole project and the source code is on my GitHub, but you know what? It's also playable on the internet. So, hey, happy holidays. Special gift that you weren't expecting. And here's hoping you find that a fun thing. I'll probably fiddle with it a little bit before making downloads of it. And I'll probably make a post on airwindows.com about that, because I might as well. But yeah, that is a random Airwindows video game that doesn't have any sound to it and isn't likely to go any farther, but it is it's an interesting thing. It set up right, especially if it's a little bit more difficult, because right now, as it exists right now, you could play it online exactly as that was, but it's set up to be maybe a little bit too easy in that the timing balls that you need to keep moving in order to keep playing stick around for a really long time. And so there's no real limit to how far you can go. Whereas the thing about it, and this is the whole deal that I was trying to produce when I was making it, is you have to type the letters written on those little balls to direct them up through the game levels. And in theory, if it's a more challenging thing, it's hard to keep track of how many are moving around, and you can't let the timing things run out and come to rest. So you need to bounce the little guys around, but you also need to direct all the lettered ones up to the top of the screen. And the top of the screen is not the direction the timing balls are going, so they drop to the bottom and come to rest and then vanish. So it does kind of work out. In any case, that is a special random bonus thing from Chris from Airwindows, which I hope you like. And if that seems interesting, I could do other Godot stuff going on into 2021, because that was also partly a proof of concept. It was, can I do stuff in Godot engine, for instance, on my Monday coding streams or whatever? And they don't have to be games, although I don't have audio working on Godot engine, but I can make calculators, I can make various programming things. And I've now established if you have made stuff in Godot Engine, it's pretty trivial not only to make it a runnable thing, but also to put it up on the web and run it as WebAssembly, HTML5. So that opens a lot of stuff up, and Godot Engine is stark raving free. I mean, I support them on their Patreon, but you can have Godot Engine, so it might be interesting for me to dive into that a little bit more and show people how to do it, because that means a lot of different things open up and become possible, whether they be like little calculators, text editing, who knows. It's an engine making runnable programs to do a variety of different stuff that can be made into a standalone application or just thrown up on the web. And the neat thing about that HTML5 version that I am happy to say, especially if I come up with other cool things to do in Godot, is that's an open source project. That's hosted on GitHub. There turned out to be a very simple set of directions for uploading your HTML5 thing to GitHub. So if I made a game or tool or something, anything, whatever it was, that ran the Godot engine, I would point out, however, that it is about a 30 meg download. So if you go to the playable game on GitHub, you're going to sit there looking at a black screen for kind of a while. Like, however long it takes for you to download like 40 megs of stuff, and only then will it run. But it doesn't hit my bandwidth. That does not hit my web hosting. That's hosted on GitHub, and the 20 meg, 20 to 40 meg download that happens every time you try to play it online doesn't come off of my web hosting, and it's not going to knock airwindows.com off of the web or anything like that. So that's a nice way to leverage how that open source thing works. You don't have to pay to do that either. And then you can just put it up on GitHub, do the HTML5 thing. Granted, it's a bit of a wait to get it to run, but if something like that turns out super useful and a cajillion people start using it, it's not going to like wipe out your website and cause you to face a horrible bill. So that's cool. Anyways, I hope you like Acceleration2, even if I have diverged into a bunch of talk about other stuff. And I hope you had a good holiday season. I had an okay holiday season. It was pretty chill, not much happening. That works for me right now. The end of the year is always pretty challenging. I'm looking forward to getting a little more motivated and stuff as the season passes and we start moving onwards into 2021. But I'm happy to say that Acceleration has a darn good update. One final note, as long as I've got you. If anybody's using the Linux VST plugin, please test it out. I had a problem doing the Windows compile a couple of weeks ago where it was constantly crashing and wouldn't work. And then I found out later that I had Wi-Fi on. So my virtual Windows was talking to the internet and breaking itself. And I had to roll it back because I had a backup of the virtual machine. So I reversed time and I rolled it back to the original version, and that seemed to work fine. Linux also was running within a virtual machine. Linux also had Wi-Fi available. Linux converted itself over to a newer version of the builds I was doing, much like when I had the Linux build running on an actual Linux laptop, which didn't compile properly for people. So I'd been running the virtual machine, and then the alternate version was on a real laptop, which is the one that I used to do for Minecraft server. That's actually still alive, but I'm not using it at the moment. If people bug me about that, maybe we can do something. when I moved it to the actual laptop and a real version of Linux that was alive and running on a real machine instead of a virtual machine, the plugins that I compiled wouldn't work for people anymore. Or at least there was one person for whom they didn't work anymore. And it was also caching something, like it was compiling everything really quick because it wasn't needing to do everything over again from scratch every time. And I've been used to having it do that. And when the virtual version of Linux on the virtual machine, that's the sort of time capsule thing that's more tightly controlled, saw the internet, it converted itself into a version where it was able to cache all of a sudden. And I have no idea. I didn't tell it to redo anything. It's just that, oh, it saw the Wi-Fi, it was able to talk to the internet, and it updated something without asking me. So Acceleration2, the Linux VST version, the .so, has been compiled on the virtual machine that usually works for everything, but in which the version of Linux apparently saw the internet and updated something about itself. So the bright side is now it compiles other stuff where it's already been compiled way faster, so it's much quicker for me to work with, but it may have broken everything. So anybody who's using the Linux VST, please check and see if that works. That's about all I can say about that, because if it's totally broken, I will roll the virtual machine back to the version that compiles everything from scratch every time. Because that was the upgrade that existed when I went to the real laptop that ran on Linux, which started producing builds that didn't work for people. And yeah, hello internet, hello compiling programs and things for people. It reminds me of the day this got into the conversation about the new Macs and the M1 processor and stuff. That reminded me of the day where I could not stream because Apple had taken to running all of my programs that I tried to launch to a special authentication server, which was down one day. And they'd never told me they were going to start doing that, but I noticed when nothing would launch anymore and I thought everything was broken and ruined. Turns out that was just the authentication server being down. But I have actually edited etc. hosts to not let them do that anymore, so I feel a little more confident as far as not randomly having my computer being brought to its knees for no good reason. But yeah, tell me if the Linux version of this new plugin works or not, because I may have to roll everything back again. And we'll see, I guess. Anywho, hope you like Acceleration2. I think it's a pretty big improvement over what I had before. Remember, it's not simply a filter, it's the acceleration limiter, so it will take effect before you hear it taking effect. And then you can also exaggerate it so that it's really extreme. And it should get you a nice kind of retro feel, a retro tone to what it does. It's like a high-frequency limiter for vinyl mastering. It might be able to get you some of that old school flavor without just dulling everything or filtering it all to hell. You can have some nice clarity and sparkle while also gluing some of that bright stuff or chilling it out. It might also work as a de-esser, I don't know. But point being, hope you like it. And I'm going to be putting out some reverb and things in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see what else we can get into on our Monday live streams and stuff. Might also get into stuff like fooling with Godot now that I've proved that can work. And on that note, I guess I'm just hanging out with you for a super extended period of time because this is like my holiday plugin post and all. So yeah, happy holidays all. Merry Christmas, those who like that. And I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.